Let's talk herd.
Sometimes I'll get clients will call and say, I've been trying this, and we were doing great, and now we hit a plateau, and I don't know what happened, and we're not all the way back to where we were before, but we've definitely hit a roadblock. And usually, when we start kind of problem solving, the issue is that the person, the guardian, is hiding some frustration with work or frustration at home. And so they're trying to hide this frustration behind a mask. And
yeah, totally. Yeah.
Then understanding that there's no such thing as hiding with horses. You cannot hide that.
No, so true. Yeah. And also I think that you don't need to.
I know, right?
Horses are not, I mean, they genuinely don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't like your energy, then they might show you, they might just sort of go away or give you some distance. But that's a good thing in a way, because it shows you like where you are.
Yes.
Yeah. But I found that if I bring on energy, it's like you said, if I kind of just, I'm not in a very good place, but I'm not really acknowledging it, then I find the horses won't be around for me. But if I really genuinely need them, like I'm in a bad place and I know it, and I want them to, I want some help, then they're there. They'll engage with that deeply. So so it's all right to share with them.
And that's essentially what I share with my clients, that the best thing you can do is, if you come into their space or even just come into the barn, just be honest. And I encourage them to voice it, even if they just say, I'm in a really bad place. Just in a really bad place. And then allow the horse. The big thing for me is to give the horse a choice, because I don't like when I hear people say that my horse is my therapist. My horse, because they need to choose if they're going to be that in our life. And so if when I ask clients to just say out loud, I'm just in a really bad place, and if they can choose a word that feels correct, like I'm sad or I'm frustrated or I'm angry, if they can choose the correct word, that energy of that word, the horse will understand. Then the horse can decide. If the horse can't do anything with that, then maybe he or she will move away. If the horse wants to be supportive, then they might elect to do something different. But having that congruence with our horses is as you know, is big.
Yeah. The whole thing about choice is it's such a kind of, I don't know, it's difficult because with my horses, their whole lifestyle is based on that. So
absolutely, right.
They really, so they've got that freedom, because I think horses, it's important that they can show their feelings through movement,
Mm-hmm.
and because that's part of who they are. And they don't always do that. But then if they can't do that, then they tend to go out of themselves because they're very spiritual in that way. Like, well, I don't know if spiritual is the right word, but they're very, and they know about vibration, and they know about how to travel and things like that. So they will just leave their physical self if they're forced to. And I think that's the issue with, and I think it's really amazing that people are awakening to that now, because there's a big difference between a horse who is what I call alive and just, shut down or not really there or doesn't have, much personality, or so it's complicated, because then, like you say, we start to, use them for therapy, and yet they're not in that place where they can choose. And so it's
and part of the issue there is that, well, for you, it's very different, because if the horse chooses to walk away, right? If you come in with, and I can't even imagine you doing this, but let's say hypothetically you come in and you're just not feeling well. If they choose to walk away, you're not going to take that personally. Whereas so many other horse people take everything about their horse so personally.
Yeah, it's true, because they are their emotional, almost like a resource, and it's not that they aren't your resource, like they are my resource as well. But I think it's something, there is something about just understanding horses in their own right. Because we're so kind of obsessed with ourselves as humans. Like, we love our and we tend to make horses live our life. Like, even to the point of, we want them to eat food like we do, like food in bowls and small amount. That's just not how horses actually eat.
Right. Breakfast, lunch, and
they don't
dinner.
wear clothes, and they do. Yeah, and just we try to, and we keep them in houses, and we dress them up in clothes. And I think if you just start, it's healthy to have like an interest in a horse as a horse. And I think it's so powerful for people to watch wild horses and like watch how they live and how incredibly tough they are and how incredibly powerful they are.
Yes.
And how they just, they're so not like, and we have, like, you see people who worry about them galloping about I'm a bit like that sometimes when they go really wild and they're galloping about. I'm like, oh my God. But when you see them in the wild,
yes,
they're just,
it's
a different level.
Yeah.
And I think we bring everything down a little bit, or maybe it's because we want to be closer to them. So we feel we have to, bring them into our lives and I know we can't keep them, as wild horses, but there's an awful lot that we could do more than what we do. And we do it partly for convenience, and partly, I just think, because we feel comfortable with them if they're part of our lifestyle, and they live the way we live. So I think that there is a certain secret in just being willing to know what a horse is, like how they live and how they feel and how they behave, and and when you become more like aware of that, then you take things less personally, because you don't read things into them. The way that.
Yeah.
But it's a steep kind of hill to climb, in a sense, because a lot of people keep their horse at a barn. They can't make those decisions,
Yeah.
So, yeah, do you find that becomes an issue? Like, how much of an issue do you think that really is? Or do you think that things are just gradually unfolding and it's perfect the way it is?
Oh, that's a really big question, right? Because
Yeah.
you can look at every scenario in a micro level, and then you can look at every scenario in
Mm.
a macro level. And so I, um, so there's a particular client, and her horse, um, and uh, the client is so dedicated to her horse, and her horse has
Mm.
multiple
Mm.
issues. And um, I can see that, um, you know, it could be helpful to the horse from an energetic perspective for the guardian to not be so hovering and so
Mm.
worrying and
Fixated.
fixated and attached, right? Just clutching, oh my goodness, clutching to this need to fix every issue that the horse has, right? There's
Mm.
almost a level of desperation there. And so there's a part of me that's slowly, it's like a delicate necklace helping the client kind of unravel these tiny little, tight little knots, one little knot at a time.
Yeah.
um, Helping her understand, and not even just understand, because she understands that the horse is her own being. She is a being, a majestic being who is sovereign. She is sovereign over her
Mm.
own body. And the
Yeah.
client, the guardian, understands that logically, but is so torn, right? She feels so
Mm.
responsible for the well-being of
Yeah.
this horse and cannot understand the horse doing everything in her capacity to reject any medicine. The guardian just can't
Mm.
understand it, just cannot understand it,
Yeah.
and feels responsible. So
Yeah.
there's a little work on that kind of micro physical level, and
Yeah.
and yet then there's also this big, beautiful, amazing macro level, which is these two
Mm.
beings are here together in this relationship at this time, in this,
Exactly.
with these experiences for a particular reason.
Mm. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so kind of allowing for things to be a little messy, because that's how we all learn.
Mm.
The, I always feel like the
So
more
true.
controlling we get, the less we're going to see the true potential of a
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's really true. Because in a way, you could see it that the whole dynamic between people and horses and every aspect of it is part of all of our awakening, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even that horses are beings who inhabit this horse body just for a particular reason,
Mm-hmm.
just as dogs are and as we are. And none of us are really these physical
Right.
creatures. We're just kind of, we're just
Yep.
in this
Yeah.
role.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is really healthy to always remember that.
Mm-hmm. And I also, um, have to remind myself of that in the really hard times, like seeing horses who are not treated well, or any number of things that we're starting to see online, with professional dressage riders or anything like that. Yes, there's the physical, the material world that we're all living in that, yes, I want to see change and be different. And yet these beings are in this experience that, we're all seeing, and we're all going through this for a reason. And I keep going back to that quote that the horses are here to help us open our hearts and listen to our hearts. And even if that means they're in situations that from the outside do not look good, and it's amplifying our desire to do better for them.
It's really true. And I think sometimes it helps just to take the value judgment out of it, like to try and see that even the people who are abusive, or maybe they're even, could be, this is just a way of thinking it that helps, thinking about it that might help, but maybe they're advanced souls and they've decided in this lifetime to come back, and this part of them is doing this thing just so that we can choose that we don't want to behave like that or be like that. Maybe I always think that of people who are particularly, like, have done particularly heinous crimes, like, serial killers and pedophiles and people like that. I just think we don't really know why they've chosen to come here and be in that role. Maybe it's because they can cope with, like, the darkness and the hatred and the, all of that invective, so that they can represent something that we can choose not to, not to partake in, and to, that we want to be something different because we have to have that contrast. So I think when you can just, train yourself a little bit not to judge it, and I'm not saying that I do that very well, but it's helpful.
It's hard to.
It really is but just to feel another way I think that helps us to feel appreciation for the fact that we are in the position that we are, and that we're able to experience the love and the appreciation and everything that we experience in our lives, and that, that is such a gift, isn't it? Not to, not to be stuck in that place, and to have, I always feel that is such a gift, to have just to have been awakened enough to understand what, just enough to feel good about my life, and, and to be able to love myself. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm there yet by any stretch. I think it's we're eternal and we carry on and we carry on, but just even to the extent of now, it's just, it is such a gift.
Right. Well, and in reality, we can really only focus on ourselves, right? Exactly. We can only change ourselves. Exactly. And so if we do that, and we love our horses and connect with them, and connect with our loved ones, and and ourself, having forgiveness and, like you said, appreciation and gratitude. I mean, I think we talked a little bit about this even last time, that that energy goes out into the world. What is that phrase? It's called the butterfly effect, right?
Oh, yes.
So with every flap of the butterfly's wing, that every atom in the universe changes.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if that's exactly what it is, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
And so by us being able to amplify our own energy, increase our own voltage, or if you want to refer to it as a vibration, just doing that will impact our whole entire world.
Absolutely. And I always think this when I think about it. If I find myself judging, or it's quite simple, really. You can only really be in two states. You're either love, and your love is radiating out of you, or you're in fear. And when you're in fear, you're judging, you're telling other people how they should be, so really, you can't judge and be love at the same time. So you can't.
Right.
So it's really obvious when you think about it. So nobody can tell anybody what's right or wrong, really, unless they can do it in love, in seeing that person for who they really are, and seeing their... And I think when you do that, you see a different... often if you see somebody and you're judging them, you see their ego really clearly, and they're pretty easy not to like. But if you're coming from a place of love, you really are able to love them. Then you see their inner child. You see the way that they've been. You see what's been done to them, or maybe you can understand how they ended up where they are, and you see them in such a different way, and then you're able to love them. So it's really powerful. So I think it's just any kind of criticism just isn't doing that. Whatever it's about, even if you think that you're righteous about it, it's just not love. So
Right. Yes, beautifully stated. Lovely.
Like all of us, we just have to keep reminding ourselves over and over and over, because it seems to be something that as human beings we don't like. I don't know, we don't seem to find it that easy to just to remember that.
Yeah, I think part of that is, most of us are not raised in that way, right? Most people, I think, are raised in an environment that's, more critical.
Absolutely.
And now with the, internet and social media, there's just so much judgment, and everyone has an opinion on everything, and every opinion is the right way. So that, that counterbalance needs to happen. And it's, it sounds silly because I keep saying it, but just returning to your breath and your feeling or sensing, coming back to your heart. I mean, it's such an easy thing to do. You literally can do it anywhere. I do it driving my car. You can do it driving. You can do it anywhere. And if we could just keep returning to our hearts
Mm.
over and over and over. I think it would make a big difference in the world.
Yeah. And I think, when you were saying that about social media, I had this quite a strong energy picture that we're actually, it's in a way, maybe it's a good thing, because it's a way for people to really experience, like immerse themselves in the experience of criticizing and judging and having opinions. And that's the only way to really realize, actually, I don't like the way this makes me feel. It just doesn't feel good. And then that's how you learn, in a way. I mean, I think obviously it's nicer to learn in the way that you're talking about, but you kind of have to be ready for that, don't you? You have to be at the stage where you're looking for a different way to feel, and you're ready for feeling something different. And in a way, the internet is kind of the least hurtful way that can happen, because it's not really going to hurt anyone that much. I mean, maybe people would disagree because suicide rates have gone up and things like that, but in a way, it's better than face to face, saying the things that people do.
Yeah. I think the hard part is when you're in the state of distress or depression or any kind of upset. When you're in that state, it's almost like a fish in water that's the color of red, right? So the fish is in the water. It doesn't know that there's any other possibility of water other than red. And if, people who have mental health challenges, when they're in that state, they don't know there's another way.
So true.
Until someone, or, sometimes medication helps, or therapy, or any number of different modalities. But, they have to be taken over to this other ocean of clear, beautiful water for them to realize, oh my gosh, there is another way. And so many people, especially young people, when they're on the internet, they're just they're just surrounded by this yucky water, and they can't see any other way. It's like people in barns, they're in a particular type of barn with a particular philosophy of the horse, and a philosophy of training, and a philosophy of nutrition and feed and hoof care. And they're swimming in a particular color of water, and they don't understand there are lots of other oceans out there.
Yeah, so true. Don't you think, though, that sometimes when I kind of feel that there is like this inner truth, and it's there in all of us, because we're all this vaster soul. And I think sometimes you just reach a point where you've had enough, and you just, it has to get bad enough. Sometimes that's just the way out for people. So it just literally gets bad enough. And they may choose to leave there, but, they may get lost. And so they just can't get out in this lifetime, and they move on to a different, maybe they go back to their soul. And I think sometimes that you just get it's so bad that that's what makes that something shift. And they just like, whatever, that opening happens, and then they can find like a different approach. Something will happen in their lives it's that old thing about how, people, no, carry on.
Oh no, yeah, I'm taking a breath because I'm feeling what you're saying.
Mm. Yeah, because it makes me think about how people will often say, more awakened, more enlightened people will often seem to say that you don't have to learn through suffering, but then they did, you know,
Mm.
and I don't know. When I think back to the times, do you know why I think that is? Because actually there is no suffering. And you only realize that there's no suffering when you suffer. So I don't think that it can just be like joyful and happy the entire time, because otherwise we'd already be we'd already be in a heaven state of mind. So when things do happen that are challenging and that are terrible and that are horrific and that are, in fact, you can have a beautiful state of mind even within that, what could be suffering, or what could, like, what you want to judge as suffering. And I think that's really the lesson, that people that, and the people that you're talking about, that in this world that's so desperate and so negative, I think it's like just and this, it's just like the shift like that. It's just a different way of looking at it, that just and it's finding that way of, just turning it around, and then everything's different and looks different, and it's not suffering anymore.